The following instructions are meant to supplement your training on Hydratight's products. Hydratight recommends that you read and understand your manuals thoroughly before operating these units. This comprehensive RSL Operations and Maintenance Manual and this pinch point chart comes with each RSL wrench unit. The torque charts inside the manual indicate pump pressure in PSI or bar and torque output in pounds-feet or Newton meters for all RSL models. A detailed instructional manual for our Hydratight pumps is also available. Hydratight recommends you read all these manuals thoroughly before operating this unit. Now we will demo basic setup of the ZU4T electric pump. First thing you want to check is to make sure that the transporting shipping plug has been replaced. This temporary shipping plug keeps the fluid in your reservoir for transit and needs to be replaced with the breather plug, which is supplied with your unit. Control pendant features include an on-off button and an advance button with auto retract feature. When you let go of the advance button, the piston in the power head automatically retracts to the starting position. Make sure the pump's voltage matches your power output. Plug your unit in. Make sure that the readout comes in and wait until it gets to 0 psi. Next, verify your voltage. If your console LED reads low voltage, consult your training manual for operational instructions. Check the hydraulic fluid level using the sight plug on the console. Keep the unit filled to a level within sight range. Use Hydratight supplied Enerpac brand oil, otherwise your pump warranty may be voided. Hydratight recommends you change your pump's hydraulic oil at least every 250 hours, or more often than that in a dirty environment. We want to now install our lines. Connect the twin hoses. Each end of the hose will have one male and one female quick connect fitting. The power console has like male and female fittings. Before you install the hoses, you need to make sure that the connectors are all clean. Wipe them off with a clean rag and do the same with your hoses, making sure there is no dirt inside. Take the supplied hose, insert it, and tighten. Make sure there is no space between the screw collar and its stop, as the space means that the screw collar is partially closed and flow will be limited. It needs to be tight. Now the next line. Push it in, ensure that it also is tight. Hook the other end of your hose to the whip hoses on the wrench and tighten it up snug. Then do the other side tight. Oil will not flow freely between connections if fittings are not fully engaged. Quick connect adapters are also available to more quickly connect the hoses. Avoid using extension cords if at all possible. If an extension cord is used, make sure it is of proper gauge. Improper gauge will cause excessive voltage drop and affect the voltage at the pump. It will also cause the cord to get hot. Using a torque calculator, determine the torque to hydraulic pressure conversion you will need to apply the proper torque output to the nut. The pump should not have too much pressure on it when starting out. To control this, set the wrench down and find the torque control valve. Loosen the locking nut on the base of the torque control valve and make sure that the control handle is all the way up counterclockwise before you start. Next, we want to set the PSI pressure on the console. Take your console, turn it on. You want to push your advance button, hold it on, and turn this until you get to the proper pressure you are looking for. This one is 3000. Release the button. Turn down the lock nut to lock the torque control valve in place and turn the console off. Operation outputs are anywhere between 123 foot-pounds and 28,000 foot-pounds, depending on application and torque wrench use. Before you apply the threaded connection, always make sure that the threads of the studs and nuts are clean. Then apply the required lubricant evenly to the threads, the nut face, and the washers if used. Lubricants, such as this moly paste, control the frictional force between the mating surface and greatly reduces the tightening and loosening torque requirements. Take your wrench, put it on the bolting flange. The wrench should be placed where the reaction arm can sit against another strong and rigid structure. There should be no loose objects placed between the reaction arm and the reaction structure. This includes the hydraulic hoses, which must be kept well clear of the operation. This is not a good reaction point because it is only hitting on a small area and would pull the foot off. So we will turn the dial lock and take our reaction foot off, then push it down and use the center of a secure surface as our reaction point, so we are in line with the stud. Do not operate the tool if the reaction is taken on the spline of the tool. A low-profile drive is more capable of operating in confined spaces, and if a reaction foot is used, it must always be used in line with the low-profile head and never rotated. For the RSL 30, a unique reaction arm must be lined up with the pin to the flats area on the spline. After we get a good reaction point, we are going to start the console back up, and then we're going to begin the operating cycle to tighten the nut. Pressing the advance button rotates the wrench forward to tighten the nut. When the wrench stops turning, it has come to the end of its forward stroke. Release the advance button so the wrench will retract. Now, reapply pressure to the advance button. Repeat this forward and retract sequence until you see that the nut will turn no further. When the nut stops turning and the gauge has reached your desired pressure point, release the button and cycle it one more time and make sure the nut does not turn and your pressure remains constant. Then you may turn your unit off or move on to the next bolt, always keeping in mind reaction points and pinch points. There are times a stud may turn all the way through and rotate the opposing nut. If this occurs, use of a bolting wrench may be required to lock off the opposing nut. As well as loading the bolt, the torque wrench can be used to remove the load. To reverse the low profile and hex drive models, this is accomplished by simply turning the tool over. To reverse the square drive model, the tool has to be partially dismantled. To perform this, the operator must remove the retainer from the drive head and then re-engage on the opposite side of the drive head. This has the effect of reversing the movement of the ratchet mechanism inside the torque wrench. It is also important to remember that when operating the wrench in reverse, the torque reaction arm must be reversed also. One of the problems that exists when carrying out torque tightening is that too much load can be applied to one point on the flange. This then overloads the gasket and can cause necking of the bolt or flange rotation. If the bolt torque exceeds the design limits, then the gasket can fail internally with no outward visible signs of the cause of the leak. If flange rotation occurs, then the flange may have to be disassembled and the old gasket replaced, or possibly may involve remachining of the flange, causing extra work. For these reasons, careful torquing of the bolts must be considered, and bolts should be torqued on opposite sides to each other and in the correct stages. For more elaborate ZU4 pump operations, refer to your pump operations manual for options and troubleshooting. Here's a summary of our operational checkpoints. Ensure that all health and safety requirements are in place. Ensure that all correct PPE is being worn. Check physical joint details against data sheet. Ensure joint is correctly assembled and aligned. Ensure correct bolt torque figures and tooling are available. Ensure bolts are correctly lubricated and lubricant coefficient of friction is known. Number your bolts and decide torquing sequence. Torque bolts to approved torque tightening procedure. Monitor alignment during tightening. Complete tag and record system. Report any exceptions or difficulties to your supervisor. Thank you for your purchase or rental of the RSL torque wrench. If you have further maintenance or operational questions, please consult your manual, or you may contact your rep or Hydratight directly.